Namaste. Welcome to the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, the yoga wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. My name is Janapati Das, and I would like to offer my respectful obeisances unto you, and thank you very much for tuning in tonight for this sharing of the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, which is so pertinent and wonderful in our lives, in our spiritual lives and in our material lives. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual teacher, Jagat Guru, Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, and His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose mercy is boundless, and whose knowledge is also boundless. I owe all and everything I've learned about the Bhagavad Gita and about spiritual life to my spiritual master and to my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has translated this Bhagavad Gita as it is, which we're going to discuss tonight. The most important and the apex of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, none different than Krishna in the age of Kali Yuga, taught us that the highest form of meditation of self-realization is the hearing and repeating of Krishna's holy names. It is non-different from Lord Chaitanya. It's non-different from Krishna. And so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to start with some chanting. So please join along. And I will find, I think I'll find a spot. Tune. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prishtaya Te Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Raja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Vasudeva Bhakti Bhakta Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Haribo, Haribo, Yolanda. Nityananda, 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 Haribo. Nityananda, 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 Haribo. Chaitanya, 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 Haribo. Chaitanya, 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 Haribo. Nityananda, 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 Haribo. Chaitanya, 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 Haribo. Nityananda, 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 Haribo. Chaitanya, 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 Haribo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Jaya Vrindavan, Shri Govinda, Gopinatha, Madana Mohana, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Jaya Vrindavan, Shri Govinda, Gopinatha, Madana Mohana, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Haribo, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai Shri Prabhupada. So welcome tonight to the Bhagavad Gita Yoga Wisdom Night. In the prayer of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the third prayer, he didn't write so much, even though he was on the planet for a while. He didn't write so much. He wrote only 8 verses. But in his third prayer, he prayed that one should chant the holy names of the Lord in a humble state of mind, feeling oneself to be lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige and ready to offer all respects to others without expecting respect in return. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. So my hope, my prayer to my spiritual teacher and to Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, my spiritual grandfather, is that I may have even just an ounce of humility in trying to transmit the message of the Bhagavad Gita. I quote the third prayer of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because it's such an essential, it is the essential aspect of transmitting spiritual knowledge and also receiving spiritual knowledge, of receiving peace and happiness. Because our world is so much filled with envy. And when I mean envy, I mean that the living entity in the material world is in utter confusion and lost and envious of one another, but mostly envious of the spiritual, of God, wanting to be God, wanting to play the role of the supreme enjoyer, thinking that I am this body, I am my mind, I am this designation, this is mine, or things need to be done for my enjoyment. I mean mine. And this is actually not our true nature. We're not envious of Krishna. In the material world, in our illusion, we become envious of God, which makes it so that we are illusioned to thinking that we are this body, this mind, this time and place, this circumstance. And the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Song of God, is Krishna. It's non-different than Krishna. Krishna's message and Krishna's, the message of the devotees of Krishna are non-different. So what I'm going to read from tonight is a little bit of the 17th chapter. I'm going to read from this chapter that's called The Divisions of Faith. And there's a lot to be said here, a lot to talk about and reflect upon, and it's really hard to get to really capture it all. But we just like when we open the Bhagavad Gita, when we engage in the Bhagavad Gita and spiritual life, just like when we engage in the chanting, which is non-different. We are my spiritual teacher has described this as like walking into a banquet hall after been starving and just seeing this just beautiful buffet of just the most delicious foods, and you're starving, but you have to kind of go over to the first, sweet ball or whatever that might be there and just be like, okay, we're going to eat some of that and nourish our body. So we can't eat it all at once, but we can take little bite sizes and just relish and contemplate and reflect upon it. So the key, the method of Shravanam, Kirtanam, hearing and repeating Krishna's holy names is the prime benediction for humanity at large. It's non-different. It is the Bhagavad Gita. It is Krishna. So this is the process we've been given by our spiritual teachers, is to practice, to hear and repeat. You know, reflecting, I've been reading on the Bhagavad Gita, and the thing that makes it very Vedic knowledge and spiritual knowledge, the absolute truth, different from your mundane material knowledge, is in this day of age and of information. You know, we have the internet, right? Back in the day, we'd have to go to the library and dig around in the library and go through the microfiles and, you know, the little card catalog to try to find information about it. But now, if so much information is available on our little device of our phone, you know, our computers or whatever, the internet is amazing, a wealth of information. I don't know if it's wealth or a disease sometimes, though, right? There's a lot of disinformation on there as well. But the difference is that material knowledge and thinking of what makes a person's so-called intelligence is this accumulation of material information. Like, okay, I can know so much about this dung beetle from South America that mates with another dung beetle, and I know the names of it in Latin, and I know this and that, and I know this about the particular climate of South America, and that's supposed to make me a very learned man. But it actually doesn't really teach you anything about the absolute truth. And the absolute truth, what makes the absolute truth different, is instead of it being a ascending process, in other words, I have to accumulate all this wealth of information to be able to lift myself up to the absolute truth. Whereas the spiritual Vedic understanding is that it's a descending process, that we receive the information through this, just like in the Lord Chaitanya's third prayer, in a very humble state of mind, receiving information, contemplating it, applying it on your life. And it's the application. It's Arjuna, if you think about it, Arjuna in the story was so certain from all of his knowledge about what he needed to do in the battle, but Krishna said, while speaking like a wise man, you're actually a fool. It's basically what he was said. You're lamenting for things that are, not necessary to be lamenting for. And so let me explain it to you. I'm your spiritual master. You receive it and you take it. And then he says later in the Bhagavad Gita that you can, I'm going to paraphrase this, of course, but, here's the information. Now do with it as you wish. And so this information, we were given it by our spiritual master, what to do to hear and chant Krishna's names primarily. That's the highest form of, just do it. That's the real just do it, and see, apply it in your life and see what happens. So what the point I was making is that the Bhagavad Gita and the scriptures, as my spiritual master has said, it's not that you accumulate the information and then you have all this information and it has no application in your life whatsoever. It's the process of following the instructions of your spiritual master, just like Krishna, that Arjuna is following the instructions of his spiritual master Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, and applying it, and that is the application. Just do this in service of me and don't worry about the outcome, but just do it as an offering to me. So we take the instructions of our spiritual master in Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, and we apply it in our life as an offering to Krishna and to our spiritual master. And we try to do that in a humble state of mind the best we can. And this is our offering. And when you have this, you apply this in your life, it's suddenly like the as it said that I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master, that's old age for me, right? He basically enlightened me by bringing a torchlight of knowledge. In other words, he brought the knowledge of information. I took the light of knowledge, or the devotee takes the light of knowledge and applies it and sees things as they are. So when you actually understand, you are given the eyes to be able to see, because you are following in a humble state of mind the instructions of your spiritual master and teacher and Krishna. You will be able to have realizations. That's why we call it self-realization. The understanding of who you are, why you're here, what the purpose of your life. And then when you read the scriptures, it's not like, okay, blah, 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 I have all this information about the Sanskrit and all the, the meanings of the roots and whatnot, which we can get into. But if you're not doing that basic premise of like following the instructions of your spiritual master, primarily in the hearing and repeating of Krishna's names in a humble state of mind, then it's useless information for you to really understand, because you won't understand it. And so when you go to the scriptures and you've been applying and you've had these kind of realizations, and you open the book and it's like right there, it's there in the book, and you're like, that's what I'm experiencing, right? It's not the other way around. We don't do that with like information in material information. We just accumulate stuff and like, well, I know this much about science, or I know this much about chemistry or politics or whatever, because I've read the Wall Street Journal or something, or I've read these Harvard whatever, right? So that's the premise of this, And the divisions of faith, we're going to get into this now. So, in this divisions of faith chapter, we are talking about, the Sanskrit word is Shraddha. And Shraddha is translated from Bhaktivedanta as faith. But in the material sense of what people think of when they think of faith is, oftentimes they think of, well, this person is a religious, that's the opposite of science. Faith is the opposite of science. In other words, the faith is some kind of belief system that you trust, but you don't really see the information. But actually, this kind of Shraddha is a complete confidence. In other words, there are other words for it. There's security, and the Sanskrit word means a castle sometimes. Like you're convinced. A god brother of mine, told me that also the Sanskrit word implies a drawing closer drawing closer to God. And so that faith is not something that is only religious people, but actually everybody has faith. You have faith in the fact that you have confidence, in other words, that when you wake up in the morning, the earth will still be there for you to step down on. You know that the planets and the moon will fall out of orbit. You have faith in science. People have faith in science. People have faith in their husbands or wives, or there's faith in so many situations. But in the spiritual sense of faith, there's nothing unscientific about it, but it's actually quite scientific, because science means the truth. And when we talk about the divisions of faith, this is our relationship, our understanding of our relationship with God. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita is about. So in the divisions of faith, we talk about, Bhaktivedanta talks about, and this chapter talks about the different aspects in the modes of material nature. When I refer to the modes of material nature, those are elements of the material energy that influence basically everything. Those are satya, which is goodness, mode of goodness, and we have the rajas, the mode of passion, and tamas, the mode of ignorance. So the mode of goodness, of course, is characterized by very peaceful, serene sometimes you go to the mountains, it's very mode of goodness because, from the surface level, if you go into the forest where all the bugs are fighting each other, that's mode of passion and mode of ignorance, definitely. But we have foods that are very mode of goodness, like very fresh foods, like vegetarian, fresh juices. We have musics that are very mode of goodness, like Bach, or like nice piano music. And then we have, as you get down, you have these different, mode of passion. Cities are oftentimes the mode of passion. That's very have to do with like sex life, things that are very go 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 go. We do exercise in mode of passion, and we have foods in the mode of passion that are very spicy, that stimulate things. And then we have things in the mode of ignorance, of course, that are sleeping, drug use. So it's, it's not necessarily that the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance are all, like the ignorance and passion are necessarily bad things in the material world, because, when we go to sleep at night, we're in the mode of ignorance, because otherwise we would still be awake and our body needs sleep. So there are places and times for things like that that are good. So that's quite an in-depth subject. If you want to read more in the Bhagavad Gita about the different gunas or different modes of material nature, you can get into that. But I want to read from some of these because this has to do with faith, or our beliefs. And so I'm going to actually just take a little section in this chapter, which is, so I'm going to actually, I'm going to choose, let me see here. Yeah, there's so many good verses, actually, it's hard to start anywhere, but I'm going to start with text 14. So, the austerity of the body consists in this: worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother. Cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence are also austerities of the body. Text 15. Austerity of speech consists in speaking truthfully and beneficially and avoiding speech that offends. One should also recite the Vedas regularly. And text 16. And serenity, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purity of thought are the austerities of the mind. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about this, because this goes back to the point of, like, sometimes people look at things in situations and they're like, how do we have a peaceful, how can people be peaceful, and how can we have a peaceful society? And they look at the symptoms of people or societies and trying to target that. So, like, for example, the idea of being, how do we be serene? How are we serene? How can we be peaceful and calm? They think, well, okay, maybe we need to, the ideal thing is to be more in the mode of goodness. We go to the, forests, and, we have a hippie kind of life or whatever. But people don't really know where to go from there. They don't know that, they think, okay, the point is I have to be out in the forest to be living a peaceful life, but this becomes a more self-centered, selfish kind of thing. They don't know what to do. They're like, oh, let's take drugs and enhance that. So that's more mode of passion, mode of ignorance. The point I wanted to make with this is that all these things have to do with our relationship ultimately with Krishna, with our relationship with God, which is the pinnacle of life on this planet, really, of our existence, is our relationship with Krishna. And while we're on this planet, our relationship with the spiritual master, if we have it, to instruct us about these things. Because all these things, serenity, simplicity, gravity, self-control, purity of thought, are very difficult to try to achieve in of themselves. It's just like saying, oh, we should love each other. That's not really easy to do, because a lot of people are very unlovable. Like, they want to kill you. Or like, you're like, oh yeah, I want to be in peace and harmony with all living entities. Try doing that. Would you do that with a cockroach or a tiger? It's like, no, but if you were to understand Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul, I am not this material body, I am spiritual, and all living entities are in different material forms in this world, experiencing different kinds of things all the time, depending on their karmic reaction and their situations. To understand that, we can chant Hare Krishna to those people. We can give them prasadam. We can chant to those people. And if it's a tiger, maybe at the zoo, you could go through the bar, say through the bars, Hari Bol, not just go over there and pet the tiger and kill your body or something. So we have to be intelligent, but we can have real intelligence and say, these are living entities under the condition of these certain situations. So the point of these situations is the austerities of body, the austerities of speech, the austerities, the kinds of way that we live come about from a cleansing of our heart. So to try to apply those things without a cleansing of the heart, of understanding who we are and what the purpose of our life is very difficult, if not impossible, because we will fall down on that. So our spiritual master in this day and age of Kali Yuga, where things are very difficult to try to focus, we have so much quarrel, chaos, confusion. We talk about the fact of austerity of speech and avoiding speech that offends people. We live on social media to offend people because we want to hurt them, because they, whatever reason or another, they don't think the same way we think. But here Bhaktivedanta and Krishna is saying, avoid that. It's an austerity to say, what? Why do I want to, I will speak truthfully and beneficially about the absolute truth, but I'm not there to try to bring down people or divide people. I'm there to try to show that I care about people and that I love these people because they are all part and parcel of Krishna. They're all my brothers and sisters. And, sometimes people don't want it. They may be offended anyway, and there's not much you can do about that but say Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, let them hear Krishna's names. But these things come through the practice that's been given to us by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this day and age of Kali Yuga, chaos, quarrel, confusion, chaos, everything that's bad, and you can just see it manifesting worse and worse as the hearing and repeating of Krishna's names. A very simple process. You can say Hari Bol, to all living entities, and they will benefit spiritually from it. And when they are ready to take up that, when it what does it say? The flower unfolds in their heart. It may not be this life, it may be another life, but you will experience, just like your heart being. There's a lot of references in the Bible of like tending your garden, right? It's like spiritual life is like tending your garden. Even when you chant Krishna's names, you have to also kind of watch for the weeds, and you got these thistles and things that have really deep roots. You have to be able to work on them constantly. And so these are the things that start to manifest as you're like, okay, now I see what this really is. You're chanting Krishna's names, you start having realizations about these kind of things, and you realize it is an austerity of speech to speak truthfully and beneficially, right? And not to try to offend or hurt people. One should recite the Vedas regularly. One should be reading the Bhagavad Gita, quoting, and those kind of things, will benefit people. And I'm going to read some purport from Bhaktivedanta Swami. But one point I wanted to bring, and I'll read this purport from text 16 and read the English. It's serenity, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purity of thought are the austerities of the mind. So the word for satisfaction of the mind, which has to do with serenity, as Bhaktivedanta, it's mana. Mana means mind, right? its word mantra comes from mana. It's like the ability, the spiritual sound vibration that helps draw the mind away from the material sound vibration and into Krishna's abode, really. And prasada. Prasada is referred to as the mercy of God. Mercy of God. And here it's referred as the satisfaction of the mind. Because the mind can be, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the worst the worst enemy or best friend, right? So when is it your worst enemy? Pretty much most of the case where you think that you are the controller of the situation. You just let your mind dictate, oh, I think I'm going to do this, or I'm going to think I'm going to do that. Arjuna was kind of in that state. He was like, you know what? He was trying to roll out all the religious reasons why he shouldn't fight because he just didn't want to deal with it. But Krishna was like, you know what? Just listen and, do what I say. Apply these things, right? And so when the mind takes on the spiritual, sound vibrations of chanting Krishna's names, it's very enjoyable to the mind. That's why when we practice the kirtan, it's like sometimes my spiritual teacher has said that it's like material world is, the mind has crows that weigh down on your shoulders, and because life is pretty horrific, terrible things happen all the time to everyone, and then ultimately death, right? And so then you come in, and then when you chant Krishna's names, it's like you go Haribo, 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 and the crows fly away. And then you feel lighter. So, and that's very attractive to the mind, even when we talk about Krishna and we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, it's very pleasing to the mind. It's very satisfying to the mind. That's why we say it's the mercy of Krishna. It is the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, as it is not just a scripture. It is a spiritual treatise that is non-different than Krishna. It's non-different than the names of Krishna. It is the same. So these kinds of things, the serenity, simplicity, gravity, taking things very seriously, self-control, all these things come about. They manifest with the presence of the realization in your heart from Krishna about who you are and what the purpose of your life is. So I'm going to read this purport. To make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. So what does that mean? That means not just that we don't, like Arjuna wanted to go off and live in the forest and just try to withdraw all of his senses and eat air and sticks or whatever yogis do, he thought, but he was a kshatriya, he was a warrior. He was, that's his job in life was to be a warrior, to protect the people, to administrate, to spread the spiritual knowledge of the Brahmanas to the people in the kingdoms, and to protect citizens. And he was just like, okay, I'm just gonna, go off and do this other thing. So that was actually his desire to want to do something, and Krishna was like, no, that's not. If you do that, you're going to have to act through sense gratification anyways, where you could be doing this thing and you do it as a service to me without the attachment, then you do it as an offering to me. It should be so trained that it can be always thinking of doing good for others. So the true austerity of living a spiritual life is actually the well-being for all living entities. And so the devotee of Krishna, the spiritual master, is the ultimate well-wisher. He is a pure medium for Krishna. And this is reflected into the fact that he is always thinking of the good of others, because they're all part and parcels of Krishna, and Krishna is his life and soul. So that's all he cares about doing is the will of Krishna, which is the good for all. Just like when you water a plant, you don't water the tree from the leaves, right? You don't water them, they're not going to grow. You have to water the root. So when we do things for Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna, then we are doing good for all people, all living entities. The best training for the mind is gravity in thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. So it's not like we're not doing, the point I was making about that, it's Arjuna, it's not like they're trying to shut down the senses from receiving anything, but they're actually utilizing their senses in the service of Krishna. So they're trying to satisfy Krishna's senses, but they use their senses. So yes, we do enjoy things. We offer food to Krishna first, to offer it to Krishna's senses, and then we receive the benediction from eating that prasadam, Krishna's mercy, and that's why they call it prasadam. One should not deviate from Krishna's consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. Like agitating. So we agitate the mind, We don't also agitate the mind by saying things, nonsense to other people, but we teach people about Krishna. That's what it means to speak truthfully. We don't talk about nonsense. We don't do things that will agitate them on their senses. Whatever. There's a lot of examples of what that will be, but we can agitate our own mind and we can agitate the minds of others, and that is actually when the mind becomes the worst enemy, because then it will torture you constantly with those thoughts, and it will burn in a fire of lust. And when I mean lust, normally in English we think about lust as like sexual desire, which is one aspect of lust. But lust is actually a burning desire to own and control whatever, other people, other things, other situations, as if it were ours to enjoy. But it's not ours to enjoy. As it said in the Sri Ishopanishad, all things animate and inanimate are owned and controlled by the Supreme Lord, and we should know who the rightful owner is and what our allotted amount is. So we are allotted, yes, we do have certain things. Some people have more money, more land, but we ultimately must know that those things do not belong to us. They don't belong to us. Not even our own body, not even ourselves. We don't belong to it. We are Krishna's. We belong to Krishna. Our purpose in life is to love and serve Krishna. And that is a happy, eternal state of bliss and knowledge. So in this present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification. Oh my God, just looking at 30 years or 40 years that I've, looked back on, and when growing up, when I was a teenager, things were bad then. Things are progressively getting worse in Kali Yuga. So there's so many ways to engage the mind in sense gratification and trying to find happiness, and I gotta have these things, I gotta be this way, I gotta be this star, I gotta look this way, I gotta identify this way, I gotta be this way, I can't be who I am. It's like I've got to be this other person. So many things. And the suicide rate in 2022 was the highest in the United States that it's ever been historically. So where is the satisfaction? People continuously say that if you just modify material sense gratification, if you give more options of social media platforms for people to try to falsely identify their body as who they are, or try to modify their body, or try to mentally use their mind to think that they're a boy or a girl or a cat or whatever they want to do, it doesn't satisfy them, because ultimately all these things are not who they are. They are spiritual in essence, completely illusioned into thinking that they're their body or their mind. And so we utilize our mind in the service of Krishna, and the mind becomes peaceful, the mind becomes serene and simplistic And we're able to apply these things in our life without having to artificially try to do them like Arjuna was trying to do. You know, go off to the forest and do these things. He could be a yogi by being a warrior, right? So this is called karma yoga, the service of your action, of what you do in your material life, whether you're a teacher or a father or a parent or a businessman, you apply it for Krishna in the service of your spiritual life towards Krishna and towards ultimately the benefit of all living beings. Very straightforward. The best course is to divert the mind to Vedic literature. That's what we're doing tonight, which is full of satisfying stories such as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. Right? This Bhagavad Gita is actually a section scripture within the Mahabharata. One could take the advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity, and one should think of the welfare of all. This is really the ultimate welfare. Of course, it's great to try to help people materially. If they're, you help the people of Maui in trying to have enough water and food, and you help the starving people in this country. You help each other in your problems in the material life. But ultimately, the highest welfare is to teach people this absolute truth. As I said here, truthfully and beneficially about who you are. You're not your body. Your body will die at some point or another, but you will continue. You are loved and cherished by the Supreme Lord in a loving relationship, but you have chosen not to follow that. You've chosen to try to play Krishna in this material world, and it just doesn't bring you any satisfaction. Life after life, you continually chase after a mirage in the desert. One can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be... Okay, so the person of Krishna consciousness observes perfect silence in this sense. Control of the mind means detaching the mind from sense enjoyment. One should be straightforward in his dealing and thereby purify his existence. All these qualities together constitute austerity and mental activities. So there's so much more in here, and this is a really amazing chapter, as the whole Bhagavad Gita is amazing. In just like this, like I said, the buffet, and the purports by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada are amazing, beautiful, and glorious. And Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada came to the Western world out of his desire to be pleasing to the instruction of his spiritual master, who said that you should bring this knowledge to the people of the West, because at that time there was really no knowledge of Krishna so much, but some yogis who taught that they were, that the sort of I am goddess philosophies had come, but this kind of knowledge had not been brought. He came with just very little money in the dead of winter, and eventually went to the nearby park. I think it was Boston, actually. And he began to chant with little kartals. And from that came just a spread of this spiritual knowledge, and gave life to so many people, including my spiritual master, of whom I have learned. And so I offer my most humble obeisances and respects to Bhaktivedanta Swami for everything that he's done. He's written so many books and so many purports, and this Bhagavad Gita, as it is a wonderful. So I would recommend buying this and reading a little bit every day and meditating upon it. And of course, as we're going to do now, chanting Krishna's names as always, because that is the highest form of knowledge, absolute truth that you can engage in. So that's all for today, and we're going to chant some. Thank you very much for joining in tonight. And Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Haribo, Tagore, Tagore, Haribo, Haribo, Tagore, Tagore, Haribo, Haribo, Tagore, Tagore, Haribo, Haribo, Tagore, Tagore, Haribo, Jananda, Chaitanya, Jananda, Chaitanya, Jananda, Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gauranga, Gauranga, Haribol. And one last thing to mention about mana prasada, the satisfaction of the mind. And I said one of the words in Sanskrit, prasadam, is castle. When you're in a castle of this mercy, of the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, it's like a solid protection. Your mind is protected from more and more. Once you step into that castle, step into the spiritual world of the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, it is a protection from anxiety, fear, anger, hatred, so many things that plague the mind normally in the material world. So step into the castle, the mana prashada of the Harinam Sankirtan. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Have a wonderful evening. Haribol.